I voted for Nikki Haley, and it was certainly a strategic vote. And while I wouldn't vote for her in a general election, a vote for Nikki Haley helps diminish Trump's influence.
And why did you vote for Nikki Haley?
It's a vote against Trump.
Do you consider yourself generally independent, Republican, or Democrat?
Democrat.
Seems to me it's a pretty accurate statement to say that Democrats voted for Nikki Haley. Yes, it was a huge win for Donald Trump. It's the first time in history that a Republican, that any candidate who wasn't an incumbent, won both Iowa and New Hampshire by double digits. Now, to be fair, in 2016, Donald Trump won New Hampshire by 20 points. This time it was by 11 points. And back in 2016, it was a crowded field with 6 major candidates running at that point. This time it was really just 2. He and Nikki Haley. That said, this is still a stupendous victory for Donald Trump. The only problem is Nikki Haley now has a narrative that she can take with her as well, because she came within 11 points of Donald Trump. Now, who made up the people that voted for her? Well, sadly, there weren't a lot of Republicans there, and Donald Trump made note of that during the evening.
So Democrats are allowed to vote, which they're going to vote for her because they don't want to run against me. They want to run against her. You know, it's a very simple system. We are leading Biden in every poll. Michigan just came out. We're leading by 11. Georgia just came out. We're leading by 13 points. We're leading everywhere now. And she's not. You know, she has one obsolete poll that she likes. She's about 2 months old, where she was leading Biden. Well, those days are gone. She's not leading Biden anymore. The problem is the Democrats want her to run desperately. So they have a lot of Democrats signing up in New Hampshire.
All right. Now, what President Trump just said there was true across the board. OK, but if you turned over to CNN, you got this response.
That's what his concern is. That's why he's been talking about and pushing a false claim that Democrats can vote in today's election. As we know, they can't. The cutoff, as every official in New Hampshire has reminded us, including Republicans, was back in October. But Trump has been pushing that lie. We all know the truth, Kaitlan Collins says. Well, that's not the entire truth, actually. In a minute, we'll give you the actual facts and full truth about New Hampshire's primary voting laws and who can vote and who can't vote in the Republican primary. But I don't need to, delve into the fact finder and the nuances of New Hampshire law too deeply to explain to Kaitlan Collins of CNN exactly who made up Nikki Haley's voting bloc. All we have to do is, watch CNN, because CNN, right after Kaitlan Collins called Donald Trump's claim that Democrats were voting for Nikki Haley a lie, CNN said this.
Take a look at the numbers. Among Trump voters, 70% of them, according to our exit polls, are registered Republicans. Donald Trump, his support, 27% of his voters are registered undeclared or independents. 3% were unregistered before today. Look at how that compares with Nikki Haley. It's a complete reversal. It's an alternate universe. Among Haley voters, 70% are registered undeclared. Only 27% are registered Republicans.
Thank you to Newsbusters for that clip. That's just CNN, right? Well, no, it's across the board. Yeah, here are the facts, if I could. I'm sorry, Kaitlan Collins. I know that this is going to disrupt your narrative. Yes, it is true that in October, if you were going to register as a Republican or a Democrat, you had to register then. And if you registered as a Republican, you vote in the Republican primary. If you register as a Democrat, you vote in the Democrat primary. And that's the beginning, middle, and end of it, right? Well, not exactly. You could also register as an undeclared. In other words, you register to vote, but you don't declare a party affiliation. And if you are undeclared, well, that means you can vote however you want. Now, what do you call a voter who has always voted Democrat, just voted for Joe Biden, and is now a registered undeclared? Well, you call that person a Democrat. And they voted for Nikki Haley. So it is not a lie to say that Democrats came out and voted for Nikki Haley. It's actually quite accurate. All of the exit polls said so. And so did the firsthand interviews of voters after the primary. Here's MSNBC, who sent an androgynous 12-year-old reporter to go talk to a similarly androgynous 12-year-old voter.
Christian, who did you vote for and why?
Yeah, so thank you. I voted for Nikki Haley, and it was certainly a strategic vote. I think the DNC is fairly resolute in their nomination for Joe Biden. And while I wouldn't vote for her in a general election, particularly on our differences with climate change solution, a women's right to bodily autonomy, or incarceration rates, I think a vote for Nikki Haley helps diminish Trump's influence in the RNC and their nomination, but is also a vote towards democracy.
And Christian is emblematic of so many conversations that I've had here throughout the day. Rachel?
Alex?
I'm really looking forward to both of those young gentlemen joining us next time when their voices change. But yeah, that's emblematic of so many voters that this guy has talked to throughout the day. What's emblematic? That it's a Democrat who has decided that the DNC is already all in with Joe Biden. So what's the point? So I'm going to diminish Trump's influence in the Republican Party by messing with this whole process and voting for Nikki Haley. And there's no way I'm going to vote for Nikki Haley in the general election because I'm a Biden supporter, because I'm a Democrat. That's what we saw. And for all this analysis that I saw on, oh God, the people that they trot out on these cable news panels who call themselves Republicans and then say, well, you know, it is true that Nikki Haley is appealing to independents and Democrats, but guess what? You're going to need those independents and those Democrats if you want to win the general election. Really? Well, every single time we nominate a candidate that appeals to independents and Democrats, and I'm thinking Mitt Romney and John McCain and Bob Dole and on and on and on, they never win. Because those Democrats, at the end of the day, end up voting for Democrats. They're funny that way, those Democrats. And if you really want to make the case that Nikki Haley is the perfect choice here because she's appealing to so many Democrats in New Hampshire, a state that we haven't won since George W. Bush, well, just take a look at this voter that CNN found. Again, remember, Kaitlan Collins of CNN said that there's no Democrats voting for Republicans in this primary. That's impossible. Well, someone at CNN found one, Kaitlan, so you might want to have an internal meeting about this.
Nikki Haley.
And why did you vote for Nikki Haley?
It's a vote against Trump. I think it would be better to have her against Biden in the elections than it would be Trump and her.
Do you consider yourself generally independent, Republican, or Democrat?
Democrat.
So when you undeclared, you voted for Nikki Haley. If it was Nikki Haley against Joe Biden in a general election, who are you voting for?
Joe Biden.
Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. First of all, point blank question. Are you a Republican, independent, or Democrat? I'm a Democrat. Who'd you vote for? Nikki Haley. Seems to me it's a pretty accurate statement to say that Democrats voted for Nikki Haley. All right. But then what else did this guy say? It would be better to have Nikki Haley running against Joe Biden. Now, you could take that statement standalone and interpret it as, oh, this person thinks Nikki Haley is a more competitive candidate against Joe Biden. And that even though he's a Democrat, he will vote for Nikki Haley against Joe Biden because he just said it would be better to have Nikki Haley against Joe Biden. You could interpret it that way until you ask that final question. If it's Haley versus Biden, who will you vote for? And he said, Biden. So Nikki Haley just got the vote of a Democrat who will not vote for Nikki Haley in the general election, and just said that they specifically want Nikki Haley to win because that would be better in the general election. Now, if you're going to vote for Biden and you think it's better to have Nikki Haley, I think that means, and again, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong here, if I'm misinterpreting, please, I'll apologize. But I'm pretty sure that if you plan on voting for Biden and you think it'll be better to have Haley running against Biden, what you're saying is you think Haley will be easier to defeat. Now, how Nikki Haley takes that broad coalition and turns it into the Republican nomination, I'm not sure. Most people aren't. Because, well, there's a word for a candidate that gets the Republican nomination by counting on Democrat votes. And it's not a winner. David Brody, independent journalist, actually did a great breakdown of this because You've seen a lot, and I mean a lot, of analysts claim that this was a huge night for Nikki Haley because she came within 11 points. And listen, it will be huge for her to go back to the very small number of multimillionaires who are funding her campaign. And she can say, listen, I'm keeping it competitive. Keep funding me. And Bill Kristol will say, absolutely, we'll get you a check. But for most voters and most people who are trying to get a nomination, second place ain't going to do it. And as David Brody breaks this down, Trump's victory was actually more impressive than the 30-point victory he got in Iowa. Watch. First of all, more than half of primary voters were not Republicans. Number two, the electorate is more moderate and more liberal than in 2016 by a factor of +9. That's polling that suggests, where are you on these issues? They're way less conservative now than they were 8 years ago. 64% of primary voters said that they were not MAGA. In other words, they weren't, Trump's typical base of support. Just 24% of primary voters called themselves very conservative. In Iowa, that number is 52%. Nikki Haley had the endorsement of the popular governor of New Hampshire. Nikki Haley invested over $30 million in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley spent most of her time in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley got it down to a two-person race. And yet, despite all those factors, as Brody says, Trump won easily. He says this thing is over. It's been over for quite some time. When you win both Iowa and New Hampshire, two states made up of totally different kinds of voters, that's called dominance. It's a great thread, and David Brody's a very smart guy. And yeah, that's pretty good analysis. That said, I'm not a cheerleader here. It's not a pep rally. I'm not going to try to tell you what should happen. I'm going to tell you what I expect to happen and just let you know what the narrative is out there. And the fact is, the South Carolina primary is on February 24th. Nikki Haley has a narrative. She's got the media behind her, and she's going to keep raising money from those super PACs and from the handful of gajillionaires who just want to hurt Donald Trump. So this thing will keep going on. And it will be that much later for the Republican Party to unite behind their candidate. But that candidate is going to be Donald Trump.